Cool. So Shipra, are we recording these sessions? No, I mean I just saw in the.
Yeah, that's a tough question. So actually, I'm just trying out, right? So
Oh,
previously
okay.
we said we will not record these sessions, but I'm just keeping the replays on
Mm,
to get a feel of the audience. If feel that we are losing on audience just because the replays are on, then we'll stop the replays and I'll even delete the recordings because the purpose of these rooms are to have a live discussion, right?
correct.
We do not want people to think that they will listen to the audio later on and they get them miss the session, so that is not the intent, and that's why I'm keeping the replays on, but that is more or less for testing purposes on whether we still go ahead with the same zeal, or whether we start losing on to our audiences.
Got it, Shipra. Or is there a way where we can like keep the downloads? Maybe for share it only to the participants who had missed it.
I did that last time, but
Okay.
Gaurav shared it on the group. So it was
Okay.
his session, so I was not able to say anything to him as well. So, but yeah, that's the
Yeah, I mean,
idea actually. So last time when people asked for the recording, I sent it on, sent it to them on one-on-one basis.
got it, Shipra. Okay, because the sessions are too good to be missed, right? So in case
Yes,
if
yes.
people
So
miss it, it would really be good to listen to the recordings at least. But yeah, you're right. It should not disturb the the purpose of the meeting also.
yeah, so the rooms that we are having, it's more than a session, right? It
Correct.
gives you a platform to discuss your experiences. You get to hear different people's view from each other. It helps networking, right? So I know you that you are very zealous about business analysis, right? So we are
Thank you.
networking with each other, right? And I
Correct.
came to know many different people, Sarita, Prashant, Gaurav, to name a few, right? And this is networking plus this is discussion. This is indeed a club, right? For why you why you will join a particular club. So that's the idea. So
Very true, Shipra.
yeah. So we'll start shortly. We are still waiting for audience to join in. Yeah, hi Shah. Shah, you there? Shah, you are on mute. Shah, you need to unmute yourself to be able to speak. Okay, let us know when you figure out the unmute button. So we have 19 people in the room. Anyone else will like to join us on stage? So this is more of a discussion, right? And the more you discuss, better it will be for your learning. So do join us on stage, and during the conversation, if you see that you can add value to it, or you have some queries, do feel free to join us on stage as well. If you are an aspiring business analyst, then communication is the most important thing that you need to have. So don't shy away from communicating with anyone, right? So that's the idea. So you need to join us on stage and ask questions. Even if you are not asking questions, at least just come on stage and say hi and share what you're understanding it. You might be wrong, you might be right. It goes both ways, right? So yeah. So good to see people joining us now. Bharat, hi Bharat.
Hey, hi Shipra. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear
hi.
you now. Yeah, I'll
Yes,
be able to help you. Right.
sure, sure. Thanks for joining us on stage. Hi Parikshit. Parikshit, you are on mute.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Parikshit, I can hear you. How are
Hi,
you
thank you,
doing?
Shipra, for inviting me on stage. I just want to say hello to everyone, and I'll ask questions later on. Thank you for conducting
Sure.
the sessions, and yes, I do agree with the speaker said earlier. We can't miss these sessions because these are too informative. So please find a way where we can replay them or share it with us. Like, find a way, please. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Parikshit, for joining us on stage. Okay, so from where should we start? Someone asked about three C's in user stories. Do we have the same person in the room right now? I forgot who asked this question. Uh, so if you are in the audience, please do join us on stage. So shall we start from three C's in user stories? We have already talked about user story, what they are. So I gave a new definition to user stories. That is, it's the story of a user. So how a user wants to interact with the system. So that's the purpose or the objective of the user story, to uh, have a written flow of how user will interact with the system. And we also talked about the objective of user stories. The objective of user stories is uh, that after development and testing and everything, it should deliver a piece of value, an incremental value. And we talked in detail about how the user stories could be split up. So we talked about spider approach, and we talked about other areas as well, right? Before we move on to three C's in user stories, if anyone has any questions, or if anyone will like to reiterate what they understood from the last session, you are most welcome. Anyone will like to give a go on what they understood from the last session, or any questions? uh, yeah, Kirti, go ahead.
So, Shipra, in the last session, yeah, excuse me, we were basically talking about the framework of the user story, which is the spider framework.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about spike, path, interface, data, and rules.
Right.
So spike is nothing but it's just like POC. In case if we need to do any kind of technical analysis, if a developer needs to do any kind of a technical analysis before we take up a user story, so that gets recorded in spike. Path, I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a generic one that all the BAs know, right? We have got the the minimum viable product path, and then we have got alternative paths, and then exceptional paths. So all of them get covered as part of path. The third one is the interface. So how we will write the user stories for different interfaces is basically getting covered here. Fourth is data. Like in case if the data flows into or flows out of a system, then we need to write different user stories for each of these data. And the fifth one is basically the business rules. So I think these were the five items that we covered last week.
Great summary, Kirti. Thanks for sharing the same with us. Hi, Tushar.
Cool. Thanks, Shipra.
Yeah. Tushar, you there? Tushar, Clubhouse is having a bug, I'll say. So we are not able to hear you. So you need to leave the room and join us again. Then let's see if we can hear you. So that was a nice summary, Kirti. One thing I'll like to reiterate, that the spider approach of breaking down the user stories is not applied to all user stories, right? So spikes will not always be there for any for each and every user story. Um, some stories may have may not have rules attached to them, right? So um, it's like you, in case you need to split the user stories, then you need to think about all the spider framework, how I can further split my story. So you may not have thought about different interfaces or integrations, as Gaurav also suggested that integrations and interfaces we can take it together. So you might not have thought about them, but in case you need to split up your story, then maybe you can say, okay, let's develop it for web first, and then we'll move on to mobile platform later. So uh, it the approach gives you a thought process, and it is useful in case you need to split your user stories. That does not mean that it will apply to all the stories. I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, got it, Shipra. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. Tushar.
So, hi Shipra.
Hi Tushar,
So are you able to
thanks.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on stage.
Thank you, Shipra.
Yeah. Okay, so we discussed user stories in detail last time. We talked about spider approach of splitting the user stories. So today I'd like to start with three C's. So someone asked about three C's. What are three C's in the user stories? So C's, the three C's stands for card, conversation, and confirmation. So I'll start with card. So what we say is that user stories are written on cards, right? So you have these sticky notes, you write your user story in that on that sticky note. So the idea is not to actually go in and have your sticky notes and write each and every sticky note story on sticky note and pass it on to the developer. The idea here is that your story should be concise enough to be written on a sticky note, rather than instead of pages and pages of word documents. Like if you think of a word, right? Word is a complete page. If you're typing it on, let's say, in font 10, there's lot and lot of text on that single page, right? So what we are saying is your user story is not even one page of a word document. It is as small as it can be written, on a sticky note. Does that make sense? Is it making sense?
Yes, Shipra. So basically,
I have a
minimum
quick question.
documentation. So,
Yeah,
sorry.
Sorry
Parikshit,
to
just
interrupt that.
yeah,
Okay,
Parikshit,
so
just give me a
Shipra.
minute.
Okay,
Just give me a minute. We'll come to you. Yeah,
sure.
Kirti. So, in case you need to speak in anything, just flash your mic and I'll give the stage to you. Okay? Just mute, unmute, mute, unmute. That will give me a warning that you want to say something. So, yeah, Kirti, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying this is with the attitude of minimum documentation. Uh,
Right. Right. So Agile Manifesto stresses upon minimum documentation and more conversation. So uh, what the idea here is not to eliminate document altogether, right? So some people think that Agile does not support documents. That does not mean that Agile says you should not have documents. Documentation of whatever is being done is very important, and it has been proven time and again. So we used to have these legacy systems where the documentation was not there, and teams struggled a lot. The moment there is any change or anything needs to be done on this application, so team used to struggle a lot in absence of documentation. And then there were cases when teams are or clients are just fighting over whether it was intended or whether it is a bug or whether it is a change request, right? So documentation is very important. The idea here is just that it should be concise. It should not be pages and pages of documentation, which will require more time to document it, which will require more time to manage it, or which will require anyone referring to these documents to read it and then try to understand that what it is all about. The documentation should be there, but it should be concise enough, it should be short enough. And when we say as a user I want to do this so that uh, you know uh, a particular objective is achieved, so that statement, that is just one liner statement. It is short and concise, and it can be written on a sticky note or on a card, right? A business card. So it can be written in just one small piece of paper. So that's why it's called user story should is equivalent to a card.
got it, Shipra. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kirti. Parikshit?
All right, thank you, Shipra. My question is, acceptance criteria are a part of user stories, right? Unless we write it, we can't say that the user story is complete. Correct?
Yeah, and that is the third C, which is confirmation. So right
So
now,
in confirmation,
we
okay,
are not discussing confirmation. We'll come to confirmation, and that's the time when we'll talk about acceptance criteria. Right now, we
okay,
are focusing on the details part of it, which is the user
got it.
story.
Sure, makes sense. Thank you.
Right? Okay. Thanks, Parikshit, for asking that question. Anyone else has any questions? Feel free to join us on stage. We are talking about three C's in user story, and we have covered the first C, which is my card. I'll take it as no. So moving on next, my next C is conversation. So what is a conversation, and who are the participant in a conversation? Can anyone tell me their thoughts on it? What is a conversation? It's a simple literal meaning of conversation. What is it?
Two people
So
speaking,
communicating,
Shipra.
Yeah,
yeah.
just flash your mic, and I'll give the
Uh,
stage to you. So Tushar, you go first.
So if you go by the literal meaning, that would be conversation, two people talking on a
Mm-hmm.
particular topic. So,
Right, right. Parikshit.
Yeah, the same as he said, communication, two people interacting. So in this case, it will be the stakeholders, maybe the stakeholders like the client or the developers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alok. Hi, Alok. It's been a while since you joined us on stage. Alok, you there? Alok, we can't hear you, so please leave the room and join us again. Kirti?
Yes, Shipra. So to me, the conversation should basically happen between the product owner and the business analyst, and the business analyst and the developer. So
Mm-hmm.
the user story should have minimum information that will enable the business analyst or the entire team to trigger the further conversation with the product owner to understand the feature better.
Hmm. Thanks, Kirti. Alok? Alok, you there? Alok, we still can't hear you. So if you're using earphones, please try removing them, and let's see if we can hear you then.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Alok, we
Okay.
can hear you
Hi,
now.
hi Shipra. Hi everyone.
Hi. Hi, Alok.
So
I,
I
I
would
think you used to join us
yes,
earlier,
yes,
right?
yeah. So I
Yeah.
joined after a long, yeah. I wanted to join, but yes, for some reason I was not able to join. So finally I joined
Uh-huh.
back. So,
Yeah.
so I would like
Glad
to
to.
add like conversation is like a discussion within all the Scrum team or maybe within all the stakeholders regarding any requirement gap or anything discussion about the project or
Right.
requirement.
Right, right. So you all are correct. Conversation is the discussion between two people, and here we are saying that the story should be discussed. So, and there is an important element when we talk about conversation. So when we say conversation, it means that the person who is speaking is communicating his thoughts clearly, and the person who is at the receiving end, he understands what the other person is saying, right? If I'm saying blah blah blah, you do not understand it, so that's not a conversation. You see what I mean? So we do not converse with kids, because when I say kids, I mean toddlers only, right? Because they're just saying some gibberish. The moment they start saying particular words, right, like papa, so we understand that he's referring to his papa. When he starts saying mum, so we understand that the kid is asking for water, right? So then it becomes a conversation. So it is very important aspect of a conversation is for two people to understand each other and speak each other's language. You see what I mean and where I'm going? So even in case of a user story, even if you are discussing it with your product owners, even if you are discussing it with developers, So that is conversation. No, there's no doubt about it. And you should not restrict yourself for when you want to uh, con- conversate about a story with only developers or PO. You should also include QC team. You should include architectures. You should include Scrum Master. You should include each and every person you can get hold of in the discussion of a user story. Of course, you have to make a good choice on who are the relevant stakeholders for this particular user story. But the more you converse, right, the more you talk about it, more clear it will become. But the key aspect here is that everyone should have the same understanding of the user story. If you have documented something which you understand, right, like it will work in this particular way, but PO might have a different understanding. PO might have taken your statements into a different way, and your developers have thought about it differently, right? Then it is not a conversation, that then it is not a good user story. Everyone should have the same level of understanding what needs to be done and how or what the output will be, right? Feel free
Yes,
to comment.
like it should be productive discussion, productive conversation.
Yes, so productive means it should everyone should give inputs to your user story. That is very important. The main idea which I am stressing upon is that your user stories should be unambiguous, right? If your
Mhm.
user stories are ambiguous, so the whenever you talk about requirements, user stories are nothing but requirements, right? So whenever you talk about requirements, you always say your requirements should be clear, your requirements should not be ambiguous, right? Because ambiguous requirements uh, keep buffer of making mistakes, and we do not want that. It should not happen that I have left room for people to understand it the way they want it. It should be to the point, and it should not be ambiguous. If I am writing the requirement and tomorrow someone else is reading the requirement, both should have the same understanding of how it will be implemented, right? It should not be left to the imagination that just imagine, because we are not writing books or fiction books or adventure books, right, where people are left on their imagination how they want to imagine it, right? We are writing a formal document, which is my user story, and people should not it should not be left to the imagination of the reader. It should say what it means. Got it?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Alok for confirming. Anyone has any questions? So that's the bit we I want to discuss about, that is conversation aspect of a user story. So if you are in audience, you have any doubts, feel free to raise your hand and I'll give the stage to you. Anyone will like to add anything to the topic, what their understanding is? We have talked about conversation aspect of a user story. Any questions? Yeah, Bharat.
Shipra, to sum it up,
Hmm.
basically conversation of when it comes to user story,
Mm-hmm.
it mainly it has to be understood by the developers mainly, because they are the ones who develop the code. So it should be layman language. We have to write in such a way that conversation in a friendly manner, like what everyone spoke between the two people. But that conversation means communication should be clear. Whatever the user story we write, it should be understandable, like as you mentioned, documentation and all. If you write, everyone should understand. So
Hmm.
exactly, the user story should be understandable, and when they see that user story, it should be like conversation. So
Right.
it mainly relates with the developers. So that is what I
not
can say.
not only developers, Bharat, your story passes on different hands. So your PO has to approve it, right? So PO should not be confused about what he or she is approving. PO should be clear on what I am approving on, right? then your story will go to scrum master. So scrum master will be scheduling it in, and assigning some developers to it. So the scrum master should know what the story is about. Scrum master should also understand what kind of a developer can be assigned to it. Then your story goes to developer has to develop it. Then your story goes to QC, it goes to UAT users, it goes to SIT users. So your story exchanges different hands. So whenever you are writing a story, it should be written in such a manner that everyone understands it. It should be written in a plain English. It should not be that it should not be too technical that only developers understand it, and PO is scratching his or her head about what this story is about, right? It should not be too technical. If it is technical in nature, mark it as text story and PO will not approve it. Similarly, if QC is going through the story, they should understand what they need to test, or how they can test it out. It should not have your user story should not have elements wherein it's not testable. We'll come to that testing part as well, but the idea is everyone should understand the story in a same manner. Does that make sense, Bharat?
Yeah, Shipra. Yeah, I totally got you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Bharat, for sharing your views. Hi, Anju.
Hi Shifra, hi everybody. I just have a question to ask because I'm fairly new to Agile. My organization doesn't. I mean, we work on the waterfall model, and
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to understand the Agile way of working on projects.
Sure.
Haven't had practical experience yet, so and I have taken the Scrum Master certification, so I know the theoretical aspect of it. I
Hmm.
just want to understand something because in the theory part of it, it's the product owner who creates the product backlog, right? So
Hmm.
I just want to know what is the I mean, what is the role of the BA here? I mean, in a Scrum setup, do we even have a BA? First of all, and also just to finish that, because as part of the Scrum team, the theory mentions the developers, the Scrum Master, and the product owner.
Hmm.
So the BA is not mentioned there at all, and uh, uh, yeah. So tell tell me how it functions in that way.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So that's a very common question, Anju. When I started looking into agile, that's the same question I asked. So that's a very common question, and I'm glad that you asked it. So BAs
Yeah.
are a part of agile team. They
Mm.
they are considered into developers. Okay,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
that's the short answer to your question. So I believe that none of the products which you are working on is small enough that it can be catered by one PO only. So what happens is, on your product, you divide it into different modules, and then you assign a PO for a particular module, right? So you
Okay.
assign each module to your different scrum teams, and
Mm.
sometimes even a module is further split up into different features.
Mm.
So in such a scenario where you have different epics, different features, and different hundreds of user stories going in development of one single product, the
Mm.
agile says there should be only one product owner,
Mm.
because it is very important for ensuring the consistency of the application. So
Yeah.
imagine yourself using an application. So you are on one page and you are getting a pop-up saying that you
Mm.
cannot proceed with this change, right? And then you move on to another page, and instead of a pop-up, you get a drop down from the top of your screen, which says that your pay you cannot proceed with it because of XYZ reason. And then you moved on to third page, and instead of a drop down from the top of the screen, there is a small pop-up toaster that came in. We call it toaster messages. There is a small pop-up at the corner of the screen which says that you cannot do this because of XYZ reason, and then it goes away, right? So
Mm.
imagine yourself, you do not know what to expect in the application, and it is a very 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 bad user experience, right?
Mm.
And this is just one example. So what happens is, agile and scrum says there should be one single product owner, so that he can ensure the consistency throughout the system. There cannot be different ways of doing the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And the moment different people start working on different things tend to be different, because
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone has their own style. So you cannot
Mm.
give your product to different business analysts,
Mm.
right? So business analysts are made part of the development team. They get their requirements from a PO, and PO's main one of the responsibilities of PO is to ensure the consistency in the application, in the architecture, and everywhere else as well.
Okay, so
So
the product backlog is created by the BA, you're saying, and the product owner just or the goes through it to ensure that the stories and everything has been recorded correctly.
see, think of it as as an owner. So you go into a shop, right? So there is one owner of the shop, and then there are different helpers to him,
Yeah.
right? So owner just looks at the things from the top. There is a cashier to take the money. There
Mm.
is a salesperson to go for the sales, and then there is a packaging guy who's packing the things, right? So
Yeah.
different people are doing their jobs, and the owner is just managing everything. So
Mm.
think of the product owner as the owner of the product. He needs to manage everything. So he is not the one who will go into and write the stories in Jira itself, and do all that hard work. And just think of it, right? He has to look into market, he has to talk to different
No, no,
clients, he has to.
I understand what
Yeah.
you say, but even the interviews that I'm attending, for instance, there are roles that actually say Scrum Master plus PM. And even the questions interviewers ask also for these kind of roles also involve whether you know how to create stories in Jira and all that. So in my mind also that thought did go through, because I wondered, okay, so is the PM actually expected to do everything? Do they not have a BA? Something that I did think of. So I'm not
Hmm.
really sure how this works in different organizations, and I'm talking about interviews with MNCs, by the way, not even SMEs. And
Yeah.
so
So
first of all, as per Agile, we're not supposed to combine a Scrum Master and a PM role itself. But even if that role is combined, I wondered whether, okay, so the PM is also going to do the BA's job and create stories and epics and subtasks in Jira as well. Is a thought that went through my mind, because those kind of questions are also being asked.
So,
So
Anju,
yeah.
sorry to say, but we are deviating from the topic for today,
Yeah.
right? Uh, what we can do is I'll schedule one session just for Scrum, right?
Okay.
And
Sure.
different roles in Scrum. Attend that session, and we can discuss it in detail, right? I,
Sure.
I
Sure. Sure.
answered your question because that's a very common question, and others might be thinking of it. But I'm sorry to say, but I do not want to deviate from the topic. We are talking
Okay. No problem.
specifically
Sure.
about user stories today, right?
Okay.
I'll set up another session for discussing Scrum roles, right? And we'll discuss what a PA is supposed to do and what a SM is
Sure.
supposed
Sure.
to do. Yeah. Hi, Kunal.
Hey, hi, Shipra. Yeah.
It's been a while since I talked to you.
Yes, yes. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and yeah, just one request to everyone: if you put on a profile picture, it helps me remember you, right? Like the moment I saw Alok and Kunal, I immediately remember them. If you, without a picture, you are just a name, and tend to be forgettable. So do keep on a profile picture. And thanks, Kunal, for keeping your same profile picture.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Tell
Yeah,
me.
I wanted to answer Anju's query, but then, yeah, rightly
Okay.
pointed out we can take it up in another session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, Kunal. Okay. Um, okay, so back to the topic. So we were talking about conversation. Uh, any questions? Any thoughts? Tushar, will you like to summarize what's your understanding of conversation is? Tushar, you there?
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Tushar.
Yeah. So, what I got it from is it's basically uh, like a scrum master or the team talking to each other uh, while developing user stories,
What do
and
you mean
that
by
should
developing
be
user stories? Do you mean the actual development of the user story, or do you mean writing user stories?
writing user stories. I mean.
And why a Scrum Master be involved in writing a user story?
Not Scrum Master, the team. Um,
Right.
Scrum Master, no, I don't believe Scrum Master will be involved. No.
Yes. So Scrum
Yeah,
Master will not be involved. The team,
yeah, Scrum Master will be. Team
product
will be
owner,
involved.
development team, QC
Mhm.
team, different stakeholders associated with the user story. They
Mhm.
will discuss the story in detail, and they'll ensure that everyone is on the same page.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Shiv.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any further questions? Anything before we move on to third C, which is confirmation? I'll take it as no. So moving on, our third C is confirmation. So someone pointed about a story is not complete without acceptance criteria, and that is true. I completely agree with it. Just a story will not make any sense to anyone, right? So when you are saying, as a user, I want to log into XYZ application so that I can access different functionalities available in the application. Thi- this one liner gives no idea, no clue how the user will log in, which user will log in, where the user will end up into, what all functionalities user will be using, and n number of questions are there. And we just, in conversation part, we said your stories should be unambiguous, right? It should not have any doubt in anyone's mind. So if I am keeping an open statement of what needs to be done, then my story is leaving a lot of doubt, lot of space for doubt, what will be done actually. And here comes the acceptance criteria part of it. So whenever you are creating a user story along with your one liner, which is small enough to be captured on a card, you need to have your acceptance criteria in place, and that's how you confirm on the user story. So you confirm how this particular objective, the which you have captured in the so that part, will be achieved. So if you think of our traditional requirements, we have business requirements, and then we say that these are the needs of my business. And then you have functional requirements, wherein you say how your business needs will be achieved or implemented in the system functionally. You also have non-functional requirement, but I will not like to avoid that discussion for the time being. So what we are saying is your user story is your business requirement. So as a business user, what business user wants to achieve, and what is the objective of the business user, so that is the objective of the business user, right? So if you have a business requirement, how that requirement will be achieved functionally, that will be your acceptance criteria. So your functional requirements are equivalent to your acceptance criteria. So you can write your functional requirements in your acceptance criteria. There is a very common question that is being asked, is what is the format of writing acceptance criteria. So per me, it is completely fine, right? You can write shall statements, users shall be able to do this, users shall be able to do this. You can write normal statements like the field length should be this, should be 10 characters. You can have a format such as given, when, then. So you can say given a user is doing something, when the user triggers something, then something should happen. So the format is not important, the thought that goes behind the format. So when we say given, when, then, the thought is, uh, you think about what are my preconditions, what is my current setup of the application is, what my trigger is in the when statement, and then what we expect the system to do. So as long as these aspects are covered, the statements can be anything, whatever your team is comfortable with, whatever your PO is comfortable with. You can go with any format, any statements you can write, English statements you can write, doesn't matter, right? But you have to keep the characteristics of a good requirement intact. So what are the characteristics of a good requirement? The correct requirement should be clear, requirement should be unambiguous, requirement should be concise, requirement should be testable, right? So all these characteristics you have to keep in mind, and you have to make it a part of your acceptance criteria. And that takes us to our next piece, which is invest in user stories. Invest suggests how to write good acceptance criteria. We will come to the invest part of it, next. But before that, let's conclude on the confirmation part of it. So any questions? Yeah, Kirti.
So Shipra, in one of the project in which I'm working, right, my manager
Mm-hmm.
is saying that the dev team will have to document the definition of done. So should is it also similar to acceptance and evaluation criteria, or is it one and the same, Shipra?
No. So there are two statements in Agile, and thanks Kirti for asking that question. Hilavar, please keep yourself on mute, and I'll give the stage to you. Okay. So there are two things. One is definition of done, and other is definition of ready. So when we say definition of ready, that is when your user story gets ready. Okay, and it is at your user story level. So when you are saying ready, that means your acceptance criteria is concluded. You have discussed the user story, your PO has approved the user story, you have gone through the user story with your team, and they have confirmed that yes, it is technically feasible and it is testable, and there are no further changes required in the story. So your user story is done and confirmed and approved, right? So that is your ready definition. So your user story gets ready. Coming on to definition of done, that is not at user story level, that is at project level. So before you start working on a sprint, you discuss with your team, how will I say that my story is has been developed, right, and is ready for release. So you put in criteria like, my story does not have any A or B category defects. I may have some recommendations, and that is fine, but I will be in a position to release my story to, and the story can go live if there are no A or B category defects. That will fall into your definition of done. Your team can say that my development piece should have been peer reviewed and approved by a senior architect or senior tech lead or team lead, right? So the architecture team has been consulted and they have confirmed on the approach. So that could be your definition of done. Your team might have some internal peer review processes, right? So that will go into your definition of done. Your story has been demoed to the product owner and the relevant stakeholders, and they have agreed on the functionalities that yes, this is what they expected. So that will go into your definition of done. So your definition of done is defined at a project level and not at a user story. It is equally applicable to all the user stories. Your user stories, if it's, you can think of it as a checklist. So all the checklist criteria has been met. Now your user story can be is ready for release to live environment. Does that clarify?
Yeah, it does, Shipra. Just a follow up on that.
Hmm.
So, uh, as a Scrum Master, right, I need to ensure that my use cases or user stories clear the definition of ready to be considered for the planning meeting, and I can also consider that the user story that's being demoed in the sprint review. So, this process can also be considered under definition of done.
Yes. So any processes that you agree for to be followed in the team. So all these processes can be included in definition of done. So definition of done is written with team's consensus. Everyone in the team agrees on it and participates in defining it. So yes, so demo of user story can be included. Your story should be marked as ready before it is included in sprint. That all those criteria can fall into definition of done category. So these are basically related to your processes.
Got it, Shipra. Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Thanks, Kirti. Bharat.
Yeah, Shipra. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
sum it up. Definition of done is nothing but whatever the acceptance criteria we have written. So if that particular user story has to meet the acceptance criteria, and it has to be, as you told, it has to be demoed to the product team, and we should get approval from them, and development has to be done. QA has to do testing. Everything is fine. Then it goes to the environment, whatever we are using, and from there it goes to the prod environment. So then it it is a definition of done if it is meeting the acceptance criteria whatever we have written. So at that point of time it is definition of done. So as far as my
So
understanding, correct me if
so
anything
Uh,
wrong.
So the criteria, when you are writing the criteria, right? That is your criteria is confirmed. That is your definition of ready, and the process that you are following, right? So your TQC needs to test it out, right? That's fine, but that's part of the process. But that QC testing will not be in the definition of done. What will be in definition of done is that there are no A or B category defects associated with the user story. So the process you need to follow, but at what leniency can be given, or what needs to be there before a particular story can go live, right? So all those criteria will go into your definition of done.
Shipra, do you mind if I
Yeah, sure, Kunal.
explain? So I'll just try to explain in a very simple manner. Okay. So let us assume there is a project, agile project, which is running. Okay. We have a first sprint, which underwent well. We had certain acceptance criteria, and we had first of all, I just wanted to clarify the as Shipra mentioned, the definition of done is an umbrella under which acceptance criteria is one of the definition of done for that particular sprint. Okay, so it's not vice versa or any other structure. So acceptance criteria is one of the primary definition of done key element. That's always what do you call it? First thing to follow. Now, coming to what is the difference between the two. So, for example, when we have already undergone one sprint and there was a sprint retrospective which happened, and then we came across and sprint review also happened. Then we came across various elements what didn't went well and what could have been done better. Okay, so let us assume there was certain testing in which the primary testing has happened, but then due to some regression testing being missed out, we had some late defects. This is one of the factors. Then some other aspect came out during the retrospective. For example, the dev team didn't do enough what do you call it unit testing and didn't follow the standard of code defined for this project to execute any requirement. Okay, so these outputs of retrospective or review comes into definition of done for subsequent sprint along with the acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria is primarily focused on one particular user story, and definition of done is for the entire sprint. So the definition of done can change sprint to sprint in a project depending on what output we get out of the sprint. Okay, that is how you can relate it, and that's how it is being followed.
Thanks, Kunal, for explaining it. Hi, Gaurav.
Hello, Shipra. Can
Thanks
I
for
add something
joining.
to this? Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
sure,
No
Gaurav.
problem.
Please go ahead.
So, from product perspective, I'll tell you how I use it, or we have been using it in my existing project or organization. So, I'm not sure whether you all are aware about releases that are there in a product. So, what happens is, if I'm building an e-commerce platform wherein I'm giving ability to book a flight or book a car to end users. So in this case, what happens is when we start with product backlogs, generally those are at high level, wherein we will start with these high level functionalities or features, and then we break them down into user stories. Now, obviously, every user story might have its own acceptance criteria. When we say definition of done, I'm talking about my own perspective. So I'm not generalizing it, but this is how we use it. So when we say definition of done, it's attached to my release. So when I'm building this particular product, if I'm saying my first release is I'm giving an ability to search a car and search a flight end to end, only one single flight that I'm giving and only single way car booking I'm giving. So that's my release. And in that release, then there can be different user stories under each functionality. So when I say booking a car one way, the user stories or the high level epics can be search for a car, look at the result of the car and book a particular car. Similarly, it will be there for flights. Now, these epics or functionalities will have their own acceptance criteria attached to it. But when I say definition of done, so the way we attach it to a release. So when I'm saying I'm releasing search functionality for a one way rental for a car, then my DOD is related to that functionality, which will run across the functionalities. So it will be in terms of booking also, if there is an acceptance criteria, if there is. So just imagine it is like when I'm releasing multiple functionalities in one release, the definition of done would be at that release level. So it will be more than what you have entered as acceptance criteria for that particular functionality or user story. So DODs are generally at uh, one level up or above the user stories acceptance criteria. And generally, as a product, we look at if I'm a product manager, I look at DODs have been fulfilled or not when I'm releasing my product to my customer. So I don't look at every user stories acceptance criteria, but I look at DODs, and that's why DODs, even points that Shipra talked about, they are generic also, because I would be able to say that my code is clean, my code is automated, or the testing is automated X so and so percentage. So that thing is also covered under my DOD, which might not be covered for my user story. So it's something which is a higher level. And if I'm talking about experience, mostly the senior BAs or maybe product managers would be involved at defining definition of duns. Acceptance criteria are generally granular level, and generally those are defined by maybe in conjunction with PO and business analyst if there are a part of that particular team. So DODs are a bit higher level.
Okay, can I just counter two things here, Gaurav? So it might be working in some manner in your project, and agile is a very what do you call it, flexible thing where each and every organization or even within organization it is being followed very uh, differently. So two things I wanted to clarify and maybe slightly correct. So first thing is when you talk about release, it's not always every sprint would give turn out to be a release. That's where agile comes into picture, and you do a release on demand. So that's how safe practice works. So you release when there is a demand to release that, or else you just put those sprint output or MVP and put it in production without even giving the functionality or user roles to use it. So when you are restricting your definition of done to what do you call it, release, then are you suggesting that after a sprint there would be no definition of done because there wouldn't be release every sprint?
See, the definition I've talked about is as per if you refer IIBA's POA guide, they have got this definition, and I was also saying that every organization follows it differently. For my sprint, I follow sprint goals, and in my sprint, the epics which are there, they have got umbrella level DOD acceptance criteria for all the user stories under that particular epic. And I'm not talking about MVP or minimum shippable products also. Generally, my release is a bigger term than so far the way I'm telling it. So there are multiple. Maybe the way I'm talking about is something which is used if basically there are multiple products under my umbrella. So currently there are three products
That
which
is
I take
fine.
care of.
My counter
So for
argument was this release which you're talking about, it might not be possible every sprint. So every sprint, there's definitely
Yeah, yeah.
high
I'm not
chance
talking
you
about
would.
see sprint level definition of done are. I mean, I haven't heard anywhere. This is the first time I'm hearing sprint level definition of done. I don't know. Maybe you have used it, so you know it, but I've never seen it in
No,
practice.
if you follow Scrum and if you follow Safe, both the guides or maybe both the way of working
Yeah, I'm talking
would
about.
tell you
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same thing.
No, but
So
then
it's
DOD
not
is.
me or
I haven't.
anyone else
Yeah, yeah,
telling
but
it.
I haven't
It's
seen it in practice. I haven't seen it in practice in my experience. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying I haven't seen it. I'm
okay.
not
Okay.
saying it's wrong.
Theoretically, I have seen it, and we are
I'm saying
practicing it as
practically
well.
we haven't. Yeah, yeah. I'm practically have never used it at that level. So
Okay. Okay.
for sprint, I've got sprint goals. That's it. And from business perspective, that is if my I meet my sprint goal, that's like it's like definition of done in a way. I don't have a definition of done for a sprint.
So that's not the ideal way, according to Scrum and Safe both. So I just wanted to clarify it
I
to
don't
the
know, but
audience here.
it's been working for me 100% in my 14
It
years of
depends. I mean,
experience.
even
So maybe
waterfall would work. That's not a.
no, it's no. Unfortunately, it doesn't work if you're talking in product.
Yeah, so you are
So
flexibly using it as per your need. So it's not the
no, it's
ideal
not
way, but
like
yeah,
it's
it's working.
basically how I'm passing out my release. That's my
That's fine.
definition of
That's
done.
fine. There is no doubt
Yeah,
about it. I'm not questioning whether you are productive with the practice you're doing or not. It's just the right practice or not. That's the only thing which I was
no,
pointing out.
it's a
That's the
see. All these guides are prescriptive. They don't tell you that you have to do
Yeah,
it
yeah,
this way.
absolutely. I'm not
So
countering that itself. So I was
correct.
just
So
suggesting what's prescribed, nothing
yeah,
beyond that.
yeah. So correct. Fair enough.
And second point was who defines that definition of done. So definition of done again, you suggested the POs or the senior BAs would do that, but again, I would not completely agree to that because there will be development teams part of their what do you call it uh, retrospective outputs, or maybe the architectural level inputs coming out maybe from a sprint or maybe from a release. So it won't be a PO or a product manager or BA who could give those inputs and include it in a definition of done. So it's entire scrum team's job to define it on a collaborative manner. So that's my understanding.
Yes, Kunal, I agree. So the team defines a definition of done.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of agile, right? Everyone follows agile, but
Yeah.
so everyone has their own way of understanding things and implementing things, right? And that's one thing which I find Scrum Guide to be that it leaves everything to the person. It's a prescriptive guide, right? It doesn't say you have to do these things in this manner. So uh, that's the beauty of it, or you can say the con of it.
Right,
Either
right.
way you can go. So every team, every manager, every team, they understands agile in a particular way. The agile they understand scrum in a particular way and implement it. And I say that everything is fine as long as you are able to deliver what you are supposed to. So coming back to um, confirmation part of it, so I think we have clarified enough how definition of done is different from definition of ready, and what my acceptance criterias are and what my acceptance criterias are not. So if I am saying number of defects should not increase so and so, then that is my definition of done. And a particular criteria which relates to a particular user story, that is my acceptance criteria, and that is my definition of ready. Anyone has any questions?
Yeah, I have a
Yeah,
question,
Parikshit.
Shipra.
Sure,
So,
Parikshit.
see, I know that we discussed it, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this point because I'm new to Agile. So, definition of done is met fully when a user says that okay, they are okay to accept it, or it's just the Scrum team who decides it. Who has the last say here?
The team, the user is just the user of it, right? So for example, we all are the Clubhouse users, so we don't get to say how many defects are acceptable in a Clubhouse update release, right? So that is the internal process of Clubhouse team. So we end users don't get to say how many defects are acceptable. They don't get to say, whether peer review should be done of the code or not, right? Does that make sense, Parikshit? Parikshit, you there? Parikshit, you are on mute.
Yes, Shipwright does. Thank you.
Right. So the internal processes are internal only, right? They are not exposed to end users. And the end user is least bothered about it until he faces a bug, which is not acceptable to him. So that's the idea. Okay. So card, conversation, confirmation. Any doubts? Any questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to invest.
I think Tushar asked one question in the chat box.
So is the tester our final authority? So no one is final authority. It's a collaborative effort. All the entire team collaborates and helps each other and discuss and define the user story, develop the user story and test it. Even BS test it. They demo it to PO. PO checks the user story during UAT, right? So no one has the final authority. So, Scrum stresses upon collaboration, so it's a collaborative effort. Gaurav, Kunal, will you like to disagree or?
No, no,
Um,
absolutely agreed. It's a team's call.
right. So thanks, Kunal. Anyone has any questions? We will like you to join on stage. It gives you a very good opportunity to improve on your communication skills. See this platform as a learning platform as well as a practicing platform wherein you can practice your verbal skills and your communication skills. So do join us on stage, ask questions. Just summarize what your understanding is, and get a confirmation on your understanding if you like to. So we are here to make you help you understand the concepts.
So Shipra,
Yeah, no.
just I have one question, maybe just regarding acceptance criteria. criteria. So just I'll give you one small example. Like suppose as a broker or agent, I would like to create a quote so that I can give the quotation to my customer. For this requirement, what will the acceptance criteria?
Okay, so I'll assume you are using a particular system,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
in this system, you'd like to create a code,
Yes.
right? So how the user will access the code page? How what when the user sees the code
First,
page, what
he
all
will log in.
inform?
He will log in the system
Yeah,
and
so
select.
I'm giving you the questions, the
Okay.
answers to which will go into your acceptance criteria. Okay, so
Hmm.
how the user will access this page? Once the user opens up this page, what all information he will see? What happens when he saves the page? What options the user will have to navigate to the next page or
Hmm.
next step? So if you start thinking about it, a story starts forming in your mind, right? And all of that will convert into your acceptance criteria. So as I
Okay.
mentioned, your acceptance criteria is your functional requirements, how user will functionally achieve the business objective. The business objective here is to be able to generate a code, right? So it's not like the user will uh, go in and say generate a code and code will be given to him, right? User will
Hmm.
have to capture some information. There will be certain processes the user will follow, right?
Right.
And what you have specified, right, user should be able to generate a code, that is not a user story, that is in fact a epic, which is further divided down into different features, such as being able to save a code, being able to uh, you know uh, follow a particular process, internal process for a code, being able to print the document or the quote document for the
Okay.
broker, right? So all these are different features of what epic you have described. And then within these features, when I say capturing a code details, then in that capturing the code details feature, you will have different xyz fields. What will be the characteristics of these fields? Some will be drop down, some will be
Right.
text, some
Right.
will be
Yeah.
numeric. In certain fields you want calculations to happen by the system, right?
Right.
So
Right.
all that will become different stories.
Right. So it's like a epic, and we can prepare so many user story for this.
Right. So
Right.
your user story is the most granular level,
Hmm.
right? So the least level to which you can split up your epic is, that is your user story,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I really love it when people ask questions, because it helps everyone. So others also ratify their understanding, as well as uh, you know it clarifies the doubts and things. And don't ever think that a question is silly. There is nothing as silly question, right? If you don't know, you don't know. There is no bad thing about it. So you don't know. I don't know many things, right? Someone asked me who is the president of India when I was a kid, and I didn't know. So so there is no silly question. So do come on stage and ask questions if you want to. I'll go to chat. Yeshwant, I'd like you to join on stage, but I'll take your question. Hi Shipra, I'm new to write user stories. Can you please tell how to write user stories? Currently, I started using writing user stories for a chatbot. So we are discussing the user stories in detail itself. We talked about writing user stories in the format as a user. I want to achieve a particular objective from my system, so that, and what is my business objective. So that is the format of the user story that we follow. So in when you are writing stories for a chatbot, you may go for something like um, uh, as as a user, when I click a particular icon, a small pop-up window should open up to the right corner of my screen, as a user, so that I can initiate the chat with the customer care, let's say. Your second story could be as a user, when I user, you have to specify the particular user role, right? As a customer, or as a buyer, or as a supplier, so whatever a particular user role is. So as a user, when I when I enter hi in my chat window, I should receive a hi back, so that I'll so that I'm informed that my chat has been initiated with the customer care, right? Something like that. If you still have more questions, do join us on stage. You need to raise your hand, and I'll invite you on stage, and you can get the clarifications. The second part of your question is, for a user, we need to display two options, yes and no, asking whether the query has been resolved. So we need to write user story for yes and user story for no. So yes, it is, because these are two different paths. So if user says yes, you are going a path. If the system says yes, uh, so the question is, has your query been resolved, right? So if the user says yes, you will say thank you for joining with us. We will now close your window, and you will close the window for the user. If the user says no, then you'll say, how can we further assist you, right? So that is a different path than the first path. And the spider approach that we discussed last time has p specifically for paths. The moment you have different paths, you should write different user stories. Will that answer your question, Reshwant? I will not know if you don't join me on stage. So, at the bottom of your screen, I see that you are new to Clubhouse. At the bottom of your screen, there is a raise hand symbol. So, click on that. I'll get the notification and invite you on stage, and you can get the clarifications. Thanks, Yashwant, for joining us on stage. You can unmute yourself and let us know if we can hear you. Again, at the bottom of your screen, there is a mic symbol.
Yeah, Shipra, thank you so much. My query has been resolved.
Oh, okay, great to hear that.
Yeah,
And do keep asking more questions. It helps everyone.
definitely. I was aware. I was not aware how to raise a question. That's the reason I
Okay.
put out in a chat.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So, I understand the Clubhouse is a new application. So
Yeah.
yeah. I hope you'll join us on stage in future as well.
Yes, definitely. I'll.
Mhm.
Hey Shipra, see, this is good right now. This kind of real-time examples, whoever is working right now, this kind
Mhm.
of stories or this kind of scenarios, if we discuss, this 2 hours is meaningful, I feel. So
Mhm.
probably guys out there who are working on real-time projects, guys are new, so many of the guys are new to this BA and PO kind of things. So if we discuss this kind of real-time scenarios rather than as a customer if I log in, so that, so other than that, if we discuss about real time projects whatever we are going through in our current scenarios, so that would be great, Shipra.
Yes, I completely agree, Bharata. So I am not able to give examples because my examples will be very insurance specific. I've worked in insurance domain for too long, so I can't think beyond insurance domain. So that's why I avoid giving examples. But yes, any examples that you like to share will definitely help everyone, and even it will give me some idea on what to discuss further on. So thanks, Bharat, for noting it down. Bhushan, hi Bhushan, welcome back.
Hey, hi Shipra.
Yeah, I
So,
see that you have picked up, you have posted your profile picture, so thanks for that.
yeah, actually, in I guess in last session only I have put that
Yeah,
profile pic. This
yeah,
at that
and
time also you said that you need to put your profile pics. So
yeah,
suddenly I
because
have.
it helps me recall that yes, I have seen this pic
Mhm.
previously, and this is a regular user or a new user, so it makes conversation better.
Okay,
And don't change your pics, otherwise I will forget you.
okay, okay.
So yeah,
Yeah,
Bhushan, please go ahead.
yeah. I'm just asking the what will say real time scenario I will give, and just help me with how to write acceptance criteria for the same user story I can write. So for example, if you are log into a mobile to Clubhouse, so you will find that below live quietly there are three dots. Okay, so when I press on that three dots, so there is one page, or it will redirect to me different screen. So which is showing like room details, the BA club replays on search room. So these are the options I am getting. So how would you write acceptance criteria for this?
I quite didn't get your scenario. So I log into Clubhouse,
Yes.
and then there are
Below
three
the
dots.
live quietly, below three dots. So there are three dots, kind of
Mhm.
menu option you can say. So when you
Okay, so
press on that button, so it shows like room details, the BA club, replace on, search room, review club rules. So these are the
I can't
options.
see
Or
those options, but yeah. So let's say there are different options. So one thing
okay,
to note here is,
I will give you another one.
hmm,
When you click on your Gmail, there is a compose option. Okay,
hmm,
so or a new option, new mail I would say. Okay,
hmm,
so
hmm,
when you press on that new mail, so it will redirect to your different screen. So in which on the header it will show compose, it will show attachment, it will show enter button. Again it will give some menu option, then it will show from who is sending the mail, then to whom you have to send a mail, subject, and the body where I can write a mail. And before
hmm.
that you can say a submit or closure button will be there. So how will you write a acceptance criteria for this?
Okay. Uh, so given I am a user who has already logged into my Gmail account, right? So I have
Okay.
established myself. Who am I? What kind of user I am? It
Mm,
could be given I am an admin user, given I am a you know a special user who has purchased some special functionalities within Gmail. So similar, something like that, right? So you will have
mm,
different user roles for accessing the Gmail. So given I am a normal user who has already logged into Gmail account. So logging into Gmail account is my prerequisite, right? I will not get these options if I have just logged into a browser,
mm,
right? So I need to be in my Gmail account. So that is my precondition. When and then what is my trigger when I click on, or when I first criteria could be when I am on my in when I am in my inbox screen, or when I am on the home page, right? So whatever the Gmail team is calling this page as, then I shall have an option to um, to create a new email, right? Here I will refrain from specifying. I should have an option on the left corner of top right corner of my screen. Why? Because that is a UX element. So the UX team gets to decide where to place this option. From a functional point of view, I just need this option. Right? Clear so far?
Yes, yes. Please continue.
Mhm. And then
Mhm.
my second criteria will be, given I'm a normal user who has already logged into my Gmail account. When I exercise the new email option, then I shall receive a new window or a pop-up, or when then a new tab should open up. So I should specify what my uh, you know what kind of option I'll see. Again, there is a UX element, I agree, but this is the UX element you get to decide with the UX team upfront, because you need to specify the what will open up, whether it will be a pop up, or whether it will be a new page, or whether it will be a new window, right? So you need to know that in order to write your story or complete your story. So you would have upfront, you would have decided this aspect with your team previously itself, and that's why you are writing it down. And then, given the user is composing a new email, now we have come out of that user has logged into the account box, right? Because that story has gone away, that has already been captured in acceptance criteria 1 and 2. And then my third criteria will be, given I am on I'm composing a new email, or I have exercised this new email option. When I uh, when I compose the email, or when I create a new email, then I shall have an option to capture who my two will be. So in two, uh, I should be able to capture email addresses only. All the email addresses should be comma separated. So these are the elements of my two. And similarly, you will go with each and every aspect of your create email, subject, CC. So everything will form different criteria. Now at this stage, your story is becoming too big, right? So you will not create a single story, you will capture each aspect of it in a separate story. So you will further break down your stories, and then your two will become one story, wherein you say that my emails, there will be separate criteria for uh, user being able to enter single email, user being able to enter multiple emails. There should be a validation on the two box saying that your email is not in the correct format, which is at the rate .com or .in, right? So there is a format of email, so there should be some text, then at the rate symbol, then some text, dot, and then com or in, or en, or certain domains are available. So that is, you will put a validation there, right? So all these will form different criteria. So for two, you can have a separate story. For subject, you can have a separate story, depends on the granularity that you want to go. Another way of approaching this is to create a data dictionary. So you have this data dictionary in place, you will capture all these aspects of a to field, of subject field, and your body field. So all these aspects will be captured in a data dictionary, and in a single story you will just say, when I open this page, then I shall uh, have certain fields available on this page, refer data dictionary for the list of fields and the characteristics of the fields. Does that answer your question, Bhushan?
Okay. So maintaining that field validation table will be helpful, and you can just write the acceptance criteria with like given when then format. So my question is like that, so you have said that we can write given when then two or multiple times in for the single story. So is that fine?
Yes, sir. So each criteria will have given when then.
Okay.
Each
So for
acceptance
each,
criteria, so you'll have
hmm,
AC01 given when then, AC02 given
okay.
when then, and then you can have notes, note,
Hmm.
and you can add further information which is relevant to that, or you can just say remove the note word, and then I shall have a two field, and these are the characteristics of my two field in the bullet points underneath that.
Okay.
Why I am saying remove note? Because you may have some finicky developer who will say that note is a note and I don't develop it. We have seen cases for that, so that's why I'm saying avoid node word. But
Okay.
uh, but yeah, you should have everything listed down.
Okay. Thank you.
Shipra, if acceptance criteria AC01, AC02, if that is the
Mhm.
case, the particular user story is not been sliced into granular level,
No, so
right?
you cannot have a story with just one criteria each.
Okay.
Your user story will have 4 to 5 criterias and can have. It's not always the case, but can have. So some see, we have to strike a balance between the maintainability as well, right? So in order to, let's say we're talking about two field, so there are n number of fields, there are n number of things that can go in this two field. User can capture single email address, user can capture multiple email addresses, and you have to specify that these addresses should be comma separated. You have to validate that uh, um, the addresses are in correct format, and then you may want to put a limit of emails, a particular email can be forwarded, so you can say that an email can be sent to only 15 addresses at a time, right? So there can be n number of things. You If you write one criteria and one story for each of these related values, right? One thing, it will not make sense. So if you have just uh, given a field, it's not giving any value to the user, right? So we said our user story needs to give a value to the user, right? So in order to give the value, the field should have certain functions associated with it. So that's why you will not split it. And moreover, if you split a single two field into 5 stories or 10 stories, just imagine the number of stories you will have. So you will have thousand of stories, and there is an admin effort that falls into BA as part of requirement management, wherein the BA has to manage those requirements, right? So the team will ask you for grooming of these stories. You have to keep a track of these stories. The SM will ask you for the status of these stories, right? So the more the number of stories, more administrative effort you will have. So you have to strike a balance. So a story can have 5 to 6 criteria. I have personally written stories with 20 criteria as well, and team had to agree to that. Uh, because of course I had my valid reasons. So uh, the ultimate thing is the story points. We say the uh, the story should not be long enough so that it does not fall into one particular sprint. The story should be sliced down so that it can be accommodated in a single sprint. So if my sprint is of 2 weeks, that is 10 working days, so I cannot pick up a 13 story point user story, right? And that's where the team will ask you to break down the story. So the story needs to be broken down into 8 and 5 acceptance criteria, but again there needs to be a logical grouping of those criteria. I can go on and talk more about it, but I'll like to take a break here.
Yeah, fine, fine, Shipra. That answers my question.
Okay,
Okay,
great to know
Shipra.
that.
Okay, so I have, come to that point only, that,
Mm-hmm.
you said that you can have a different user story for who are there in the two mails, who are so the or like that, what I would say, some restriction about number of people who can you send mails. So if you split it like that, then we will end up with multiple user stories.
No,
So,
no, I didn't say that. I said these are different criterias, but they are related criterias and should be part of same story. If you split it multiple stories, your administrative efforts will increase and
mm,
will you know will go beyond your control. So don't split out these separate criterias. Have a single story with related criterias.
okay, okay. So, for example, what I have, given that regarding that mail option. So, is that fine if we maintain it in only one story? Like that, there is an option to where I can press the compose button, and it will redirect to me a different page, and on that different page these are the fields. So particular this feature, if you have maintained it in one user story, so is that fine? Or what you said, that we need to split it out, means how much estimate it will take for the
So
if
so
yeah.
that's the thing, you have to ask your developers, right? You have to give them the story and say that you need to build up this entire page. Can you do it in one sprint or not? If they say that we cannot do it in one sprint, then you
Hmm.
have to split your stories. What you can do is you can have one single story to for introducing all the fields, and you can have separate story for introducing validations in those fields, right? Because validations is a separate effort. So they might be using some business rule or something for implementing the validations, right? Then you can have a separate story for auditing these fields. So when the user saves the value, then or an email goes to the recipients, an audit trail needs to be maintained in the backend, right? So the audit story can be split out. So you need to split your story so that it is achievable in a single sprint. But if your team says, yeah, we can do, or we can introduce all the fields in a single go, doesn't it's not a lot of work, and it is easier to do it all together, right, rather than doing it in different sprints, then they go for it and write one single story.
Okay,
It all
okay.
depends on your collaboration, and what is fine with the development team and what is fine with the PO. You have to strike a balance, right? So you can split your stories infinitely. So as Bharat said, one story for one criteria, right? You can split it that way, but it is not solving any purpose, right? It is not giving you value, it is just increasing your administrative work. You cannot have all the 100 criteria listed down in one story, because you will not be able to fit it in a sprint. So you need to uh, logically group the acceptance criteria that you want to achieve, so that it is not a lot of writing work for you, as well as it is it can be scheduled in a sprint, and everyone is happy basically.
Okay. So this kind of estimation, or we do it that in sprint planning, or in grooming of that backlog, or what?
Personally, we do it during grooming itself. So in my project, what we do is we groom the story, and we ask team to estimate the work. And since they are very used to it, because the project is ongoing for a year or two, so they're very
Mm-hmm.
used to it, and they just give us the story points right away. But I'm sure there will be teams who will be having separate sessions only for story pointing the stories, and they might be having this poker method or whatever method they are following
Mm-hmm.
for estimating the work. In other projects, SM will be asking the team to go through the stories after grooming and then story pointing them. Some will be asking the team to go through the stories and story point them before grooming itself, right, because they have to plan for it. So different teams, different agile butts, I'd say.
Yeah.
So there is
Different
no
team,
hard and
different
fast
agile
rule.
is there. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no hard and fast rule. Scrum is very prescriptive in all those methods.
Mhm. So I'm just checking with you that do you have any kind of sample for the reference? Like the for example, we have discussed that compose mail functionality in the Gmail. So kind of a sample that these are the feature, these are the user stories, and this is the way I have write the acceptance criteria. Can you help me with that,
It won't
or
do
what?
any good, right? Because one thing is, every BA has to develop their own way of writing the stories, or they have their own style of writing the stories, right? So we have suggested given when then, not me, but of course many others have suggested given when then format. So that is just one way. So even so, you can find n number of examples online to help you understand how to write user stories. I have given one example on the fly as well. So but we do not know what exact requirements you are writing, right? So we will not be able to give you something which you will just copy down. And in fact, you should not copy down as well, right? So you have to improve your skills and you have to learn, right? So you'll make mistakes. So I'm always in a favor of making mistakes, right? Make mistakes. Why? Because that means you are doing some work rather than it's always better than not doing any work and not making any mistakes. So make mistakes, learn from them and go ahead. Just don't ponder too much on them. And everyone makes mistakes, so we all are human, right? Human is bound to make mistakes. They are made in a way that they may make mistakes. So just make mistakes and go ahead.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Shipra, Yashwant here.
Yes, Yashwant.
As I already said, I'm working on a chatbot project.
Mm-hmm.
In my project, there are two paths. Certainly, both paths are ending at a single point, and
Mm-hmm.
finally, chatbot need to direct that single path. Chatbot need to direct in a single path finally for those
Mm-hmm.
two paths.
Mm-hmm.
Since initially we started with two paths, so I need to write the final path twice or once.
Um, so they see the development will happen only once. So I'm not sure what your path is, but let's say you are giving a particular page to the user saying that the process is complete, right?
Yes,
that is
yes.
that is your endpoint. So
Hmm,
in that case, you can say that when the user selects yes option, uh, so and so screen should open up for the user and refer this story for the screen details. In the second story, when the user selects no option, this should happen, and then the user will be presented with a page and refer the same story for the screen details, and write one story for the screen page wherein you'll say thank you for using this chat bot, and the text message will be shown, and when user closes the screen, the user needs to close the browser, right? So
hmm.
so all those details you will put in one story. So don't duplicate requirements, refer to the requirements instead, right? So you have one story which talks about that ultimate page, and then your different paths, your criteria says it will open up this page and the details are in this page. So now when someone wants you to change the message that is shown to the user, so someone say I don't want thanks word, I want thank you word, right? So some users are very finicky, so they'll say instead of thanks for contacting us, I do not want thanks, I want thank you for contacting us, right? So in that case you have to make change in only one story, which is your final page story. You will not go in and make changes in all your different path stories. You will not make change in yes story, you will not make change in no story. So each requirement needs to be there in one place only. Does that answer your question, Yashwant?
No, Shipra. Actually, my question is that initially we started with two paths.
Hmm.
In between, we are reaching out a point where 2 points are getting collided.
Right, so there will be a story for this point, and they will in the story where you're talking about the path, say that reach this point and refer this story.
Okay, after reaching that point, also there is a further path for the initially started two paths. There is also a further pages. So I need to
Right.
write.
Okay,
Uh,
let me
uh,
explain in a different way, right? So
okay.
whenever you're talking about path, right,
Hmm,
what is happening is you have one page. On this page you have some option,
mhm.
and on click of this option you are directing to the second page,
Second page. Mhm.
right? that is
Yes.
that is your path, your end to end path. So you
Hmm,
will have one story for the first page, what this page will comprise of. You will have one story for the second page, what the second page will comprise of. And then
huh.
you will have a third story which says that the option on the first page, when user clicks on it, it will take me to the second page. In this story you will not talk about first page, you will not talk about second page, you will only talk about the option. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you'll have three stories, one for one page, second for second page, and third is for only the option, the only the process.
Okay, okay, got it.
Okay, so similarly when you're having two parts, right? So you'll have one first page from where your yes path starts. You'll have second page story from where the no path
No part
starts.
starts.
Then you have the final page which is ultimately shown to the user. Your fourth story will be directing from yes page to this page. Your fifth story will be directing from no page to this page, to
Okay.
this final page. So you'll have 5 stories in total.
Okay. So third page story, I need not to write in first and second once again. I need to make it
Right.
as a separate path
So
once
your
again.
your path and your pages, they are two
Huh.
separate entities, right? They are two separate things. You do not mix them up. You'll
Okay.
just say on this page I'll have this option. When I click on this option, I'll go to so and so page. And on when you say on this page, you'll say refer user story this, which talks about first page. And in your third criteria or the third step, you'll say refer this story which talks about the last page.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. Glad to help you, Shant.
Thank you. Thank you, Shipra.
Yeah. So just a reminder to everyone, we will close our session at 11:30 or close to that. So this is effectively the last chance. I wanted to cover invest, but we are having some very good conversation here about the three C's of a user story, and we are clarifying user stories with some examples. So I will not cover invest today because I don't want to rush on things. We can we will have a separate session on invest, as well as we'll have separate sessions on discussing on Scrum and Scrum roles and different topics of Scrums. One more thing, I might not have the session scheduled for next Saturday. I am planning for some personal engagement, so we'll catch up next Saturday, and I'll try to reach out to Satish if he can arrange the third part of our session. But let's see. Otherwise, we'll reconvene on the invest in user stories discussion. So in case you have any questions, any clarifications, do join us on stage and ask your questions. I see that there are a couple of queries in the chat window, so let me go through them. Uh, Gaurav is saying, Kunal, could you please share the links where Scrum or SAFe explicitly mentions the DODs should be at sprint level? I'm not able to recollect this one. Let it be, I'll search and find out. Okay, so I'm ignoring your comment, Gaurav. Parikshit was not able to hear. Parikshit, I hope your issue has been resolved now. Okay, so Priyanka is asking, how can we relate MVP and Epic? Any example? Okay, so that's a very long conversation, Priyanka. I doubt I'll be able to cover it in this session. Let me give you a brief idea, right? So MVP is minimum viable product, right? So when we say minimum viable product, that means my product should be able to have the basic functionality which I am aiming for without the frills. So when I say frills, it means all the good things or all the fancy things, right? It should just give me a basic functionality. So an example would be, so I want to go from one place to another, right? So my MVP could be just a cycle. So it gives me the function to reach one place to another, but without the extra comfort, or it involves hard work. It's a long way, but it does the work, right? It does achieves the aim. And then I'll start adding frills to it. So I'll add a motor to it and make it a motorbike. Then I'll add 4 tires to it, make it a car. And then I'll keep on adding AC, and then I'll keep on adding stereo, right? So I keep on adding features to it. So my MVP is just the basic product, which is my cycle, to help me go from one place to another, right? So that is my MVP. And now my MVP, all these features that I'm talking about, right? Adding 4 wheels, or giving a roof to it, or adding a stereo, adding an AC, right? So all these are my different epics. These epics will further divide into sub epic. So if I take an example of a stereo, so my stereo, I can connect to FM, I can play CD on it, right? So these are different features within my epic. And then how these features will be implemented on my on when a user is connecting to FM, user can go to station A, user can scan the stations, and all these stations will list up, and so on and so forth, right? So I can have different stories within my epics, within my features. So all these epic is one feature that I need to implement, if we see it this way, right? So relation of MVP and epic is that what all epics you want to implement for your feature, you have to decide what forms a part of your MVP and what not. So you will not add AC in the first go, you will not add stereo in the first go, you will not even add four wheels and a roof in the first go, right? So you'll just have two wheels, and that's what gets you going, right? So that's basically the relation between MVP and epic, that you'll select which epics will be part of your MVP. I hope that answers your question. If you have any doubts, feel free to join us on stage. I don't see uh, Priyanka anywhere, but yeah. Uh, Okay,
Um,
so Priyanka has confirmed that she got the clarification. Good to hear that. But of course, Priyanka, I'd like you to join us on stage and ask the question, on stage yourself. That will help you be more communicative, as well as help you clarify your doubts better. How a new BA has to adopt and create his or her style or writing BA, writing user stories. A new, so what when I say style, right? So it's like uh, it's kind of your signature, right? So everyone has their own signature, everyone has their own style of writing things. So when a BA joins a particular project team which is ongoing, I always recommend following the style um, of the previous BAs, because everyone is comfortable with that, right? So developers are comfortable with that, other PO is comfortable with that. So you do not want to introduce new things which you have just joined a project, and immediately you do not want to introduce new things which will disrupt their way of working, and everyone is thinking, why this person has joined us, he has just created the confusion or increased our work, right? We do not want to end up into that scenario. So if you are working in an ongoing project, if you have been allocated to an ongoing project, first adapt what they are doing, right? Just adapt the style of the BA who is already working on it. The BA might be a junior BA, doesn't matter, right? So junior senior doesn't matter here at all. And then slowly and slowly improve upon it. So that's the way you go about it. In another scenario, when you have joined a new project altogether, in that case you can start with whatever experience you have so far, right? So everyone has their own share of experiences, and that's get infiltrated into their style, right? So based on my experiences, I write a story in a particular way. Based on someone else's experiences, he might be writing stories in his own way. So that's how it usually works. I'm not sure whether I have answered your question, Jeevan, or not, but feel free to join us on stage and ask the same question, and get more clarification if you like to. Bhushan, would you like
yes,
to add
Shipra.
anything?
No, actually, I will again back to the epic only. So the function we have discussed is of compose mail. Compose means we can send a new mail. So that will come under epic or what? So if that is a particular feature, whether
Yes,
we can,
create composing an email is a big piece of work in itself. It cannot be
hmm,
a single user story. It will comprise of an at least a feature, if not epic.
okay, okay. And for an example, if you are considering, sorry, if you are developing a particular website or web page or application, mobile application, and it should have home page screen, then it should have some other page screen. So for each, what I would say, screen, we should have one epic, and under that we can write user story. So that approach we can follow, or what's your take on this?
So Bhushan, personally, I will not go with screen by screen, but I will go by entity wise. You understand what an entity is?
Mm,
We discussed entities in our last session, but I'm not sure whether you were there or not.
okay, so entity means particular in perspective of a user wise, user role wise, you are talking
No,
about.
no, user role is not a entity. So the example I gave in the last session was a car is one entity, and a
Yes.
battery is another entity, right?
Okay.
Wheels is third entity.
Mhm.
So the body of a car, right? So it will have some color, it will have some shape. Wheels will will be made of rubber, right? So that is the property of the wheel. Wheel will have certain spikes on it, or certain cuts. I'm not sure what do we call those lines, but there will be some cuts on it. It will have an axle, right? So those will be the characteristics of a wheel. And then my battery will have four cylinders. My battery will be most probably a black in color, right? So battery needs to give electric charge. So this is the third characteristics. So all my characteristics, so all my entities are different, right? And they have their own characteristics. You see what I mean? So if I take an example from an insurance domain, so the quote, right, the insurance policy is one entity. Along with this policy, I'm capturing certain parties, right? Who is purchasing the policy, who is issuing the policy. So all these parties are my second entity. So parties will have their own characteristics, and my quote will have their own characteristics, right? So you can have your epics based on entities. That's one way of going for it. Another way of going for it could be the processes, right? So you can have a one complete flow which you like to split out into different sections. That flow can form one epic. So again, taking an insurance example, so if I am renewing a policy, so that is one epic. If I am performing endorsement, or midterm adjustment on a policy, if I'm adjusting the policy, that could be another epic, because renewing a policy will have a different flow than updating a policy. They both will have a different flow than creating a policy, right? So that's how you define your epics, not
Okay.
page wise.
Okay. So just to practice, if I am not, you use that user story and acceptance criteria. So for
Hmm.
just a practice, can I write a user story like for compose email we have discussed? So like that feature I can take, and I can try to write user stories with acceptance criteria. So that will help or not?
Hmm.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
the more you practice, right, you'll the more chances you are giving yourself to see the flaws in what you are doing, right? And uh, once you are conscious of the flaws which you are doing, you can improve upon it, right? So it's always better to practice. So you can take any example, or I sometime back, I also posted, like, go to this website and write the user stories for it, for your practice purposes, right? So you can take any example, purchasing a product on Amazon, or the example that you are composing an email, right, sending out an email. And number of examples are there in our day-to-day life. You can take any example, try thinking about it, splitting it up, writing user stories, and you'll see how much you are improving, right? So yeah, you should all you can do that, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we are at 11:24. I doubt if I'll be able to cover anything else. So yeah. Any last minute questions? Kirti, you are flashing your
Yes,
mic.
Shipra, I have a quick question based on
Sure.
what I'm seeing in my client. So what we basically see is, for any project we don't have more than two, more than two epics. and everything is basically being monitored at an initiative level. So the understanding here is, Shipra, when we start looking at the epic level, the estimation goes like very high, right? And we basically put the estimate as like roughly around like 100 user stories and things like that. That's I mean, even that is a very small number, right? But when we bifurcate all of these, I mean, all of these at the feature level, we see a lot of features happening, but only maximum of two epics per project. I just wanted to understand if this is an acceptable practice, or like how is it basically being followed in the, I mean, in the other industries.
So one thing is there is no hard and fast rule about having two epics.
Okay.
It might be, in the definition of done for your project, or it won't even qualify for definition of done, but yeah, it might be a best practice. I'll say it's not a rule, but it could be a best practice to be which is being followed in your project. So there is no hard and fast rule about the number of epics, and of course, when you get an epic, you have to split it down to features,
Hmm.
and then you have to prioritize your features, and then you have to decide on which features will form the part of your current release. I won't say sprint, because sprint will be too short. So you will have an upcoming release, right? So which features will form part of your upcoming release, and
Okay.
then you will write the user stories for your features, and then again you prioritize your user stories and say which of them are MVP and which are not. So
Got
that's
it.
the exercise you need to do in order to come to the final list. Because when you
Mhm.
start discussing your user stories, your client will come up with the wish list for sure, right?
Correct.
And there is no end to it. A wish list is a wish list, right? So there is no end to wishes, and your client will definitely come with a wish list, and you have to put your foot down and say that this is not MVP, this is only a wish list, and we are not going with it as part of MVP. I'll log a backlog story for you, and we will
Mm.
take it in future releases, not in this current release. And it is quite possible that this wish list is a very realistic thing, and they do need this feature. So it can become uh, your main item or main feature in the next release. But you have to make sure that what's the goal your current release is having, and you need to stick to the goal. So you will always have features which you need to move to backlog, you will always have user stories which you need to move to backlog. You cannot take each and everything, because your release will have a certain limited effort, right?
Got it, Shipra. So, if my understanding is correct, my definition of an MVP can be encapsulated into a feature. It doesn't necessarily have to be elaborated at an epic level, right, Shipra?
uh, MVP can comprise of multiple features. It's
Okay.
not that so different modules interact with each other to give the end result to the user, right? So
Right.
if I'm issuing a policy, I know that there are bound to be claims on it. Again, I'm switching over to insurance example, but yeah.
Mm.
So if I am moving something to my cart, there will be chances that user will like to buy it, right? So i
Right.
cannot i cannot say that I have given the feature of moving an item to the cart, and that is my MVP, because that is not giving any value to the end user, it is not completing the process. So
Correct.
you have to give an option to the user as part of your MVP to purchase the item that he or she has moved to the cart. The purchase could be limited to only cash option, or the purchase could be limited only to the card option, right?
Right.
That will be your MVP. Adding the frills of giving multiple options of Paytm, of Google Pay, or Phone Pay, or n number of UPIs. So all those options are your frills, and they can be moved out of MVP.
Right.
You will not give all the payment options in one go, but if you are giving an option to purchase. So your release goal is allowing user to purchase, right? So you need to give an option to move to cart, and you need to give an option to make the payment and purchasing or ordering that item, and then you have to have certain processes in place to deliver that item to the end user, right? Only then the process flow will come complete. So when we say MVP, it has to be one one complete flow which is giving value to the user and not bits and parts of it.
Right. Got it, Shipra.
Like we are providing some at least working software.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
Hmm.
So working software which is delivering value,
yeah.
that's uh,
Correct.
that is the aim of MVP.
Makes sense. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, thanks
Thanks.
Alok for summarizing it so well in just a few words.
Hi, Jipra.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who's
Ashish here.
Yeah, Ashish.
Yeah, so I have one last question, and it's a very, I think, small question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm an aspiring BA, and I just wanted to know when we're writing user stories. It is regarding user stories and wireframes. So, when I'm writing user stories, it is, I mean, is it necessary to follow some logical sequence that we should use wireframes first and then write user stories, or vice versa? I mean, is there any logical sequence? Or
So there are two aspects. When we say
yeah,
wireframe, that is your user UX, right? User
right.
experience, as we
Yeah,
call it.
yeah.
So keep your stories independent of UX always, right? Do not dictate how what the look and feel to the user if you have a separate UX team in your project. There are
Okay,
certain projects which are very small projects, and SM doesn't even think of bringing a UX person into the team. Or there can be cases where the software is already there and you are just working on on minor changes to it, and there is no need of user experience because the user experience is more or less established out there, right? And it's nothing new you are developing. So
okay,
there will be instances in your work profile where you do not have a UX. And even in that case, keep your wireframe or keep your screenshots or design that you have done, right, as a separate entity
okay,
than your user story. So when you are writing your user story, do not involve functional elements to it. Okay. do
okay.
not do not. So let's say user needs to make a selection between yes or no. Okay. So
Hmm.
just write functionally that users should be able to select either yes or no for this option. Now, here you are not saying it should be a drop down wherein yes and no will be two options. You are not saying there will be a checkbox where user will say yes or no. You are not saying that it will be a radio button where you are saying yes or no. So keep all those UX elements out of it and let UX team decide whether they want to have a toggle. You understand what a toggle is, right? So there is a
Yes.
small icon wherein you say yes and no, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like a switch, right? So let UX team decide whether they want a switch, whether they want a toggle, whether they want a drop down, whether they want a radio button, right? Why you are dictating it? You are not supposed to dictate it. That's the job of UX. If you are the UX on the project, then say that refer wireframe which I have developed, and either take developers to the wireframe, or if you have not developed a wireframe, because you might not be able to create wireframe for each and every story, right? So just
Right.
leave it to the developers how they want to implement it. Sometimes keeping mum on these points is the best thing to do, because it saves you a lot of work, right? On the
Hmm.
small points can take up a lot of your time. So ideally it should be established in the project or the product itself. So all the options will be provided as a drop down, or all the yes no options will be provided as a toggle. So that is something that your project would have, or the product would have agreed upon, much before you have started writing user stories. That's a part of the UX confirmation or architecture, right? That is not a BA's job to say whether it will be a radio button or a drop down. We do tend to write, it should be a drop down, because personally, if there is a list to show to the user, right? You cannot have radio buttons or you cannot have check boxes for it. That you have to have a drop down. So that is fine to, if you are saying, if you are incorporating certain elements like drop down, say that user should be able to select a value from the list of values. So I prefer to write list of values, but I have seen people writing, user should be able to make a selection from a drop down list of values. That is fine too. So that again goes into the style of writing, right? So everyone has their own style of writing. Personally, I believe that UX element should not be mixed up into my functional story, and let my story be functional aspects only. That will
Okay,
help.
so as a business analyst, I should be more focused on writing user stories. And if it is already established that this wireframes I won't do, and there is a separate UX UI team, so I won't be doing that, right? So I will be only focusing on my user stories.
Yeah, so see, BA job does not end in writing the user stories, right? You
Right.
have to be responsible for what is being delivered, right?
Yeah.
So if if you need to review the wireframe that UX team is coming up with, right? If you feel that the user
Okay.
might not be comfortable with this wireframe or this UX, then you have to raise it with the UX team, right? So you have to give your initial inputs, how you envision it, how you imagine this screen to be, right? Even if you are not giving the entire wireframe, because UX is working on it and we don't want to duplicate efforts, but you should give them some idea of how you are imagining it to be.
Okay.
So that will help one thing, UX team, but they might come up with something totally different from what you are imagining. And be open about it. Don't say that, okay, I told you to do this, why you have not done that. You do not want to end up in a situation where UX team does what you say, and later on client doesn't like it, and there's a lot of rework effort, and UX
Okay.
team is saying BA dictated that, right? We proposed something else and BA said, no, 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 right? So be open about changes, right? So if they are
Hmm.
proposing something, they are doing it with their experience. Until and unless you feel that it is not a very good user experience, or user is not going to agree with this approach, right? So try to be understanding of
Yeah.
others efforts. And yeah, basically that's it. So focus on the functional aspect of the user stories rather than dictating the wireframes. But yes, do keep a check of what is being done, right? So even if developers have done a particular thing in a particular way, and you are not liking it, do raise your concerns about that, right?
Okay.
So I'm working in IT sector from quite some time, so I even give architectural guidance to the developers, right? So
Okay.
do like that, do like that. So depends on how much you want to get yourself involved into. But uh, main thing is strike a balance, right? So
Hmm.
don't be overpowering, and don't be that no one knows about your presence. They know just they just know you uh, as a BA on the user story, right? So you have to strike a balance. People should know you, and people should respect you, and you can get the respect only when you respect them, right?
Yeah.
you
It's
you cannot be too authoritative and expect respect from others. So
true.
so you have to be helpful in order to get help from them.
Sure. Sure. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, welcome, Ashish. Okay, we have overshooted by 8 minutes, but I'm glad to see we still have 24 people with us right now. It's always good to have a good audience. Before we close the call, anyone will like to add anything, say anything, ask anything? As I mentioned, I might not have the call next Saturday, and next to next Saturday we'll see with Satish what his availability is. Otherwise, we'll continue our discussion on user stories, and I'll like to take up the invest approach.
So we would eagerly waiting for next Saturday.
Yeah, Alok,
It was really
was
great.
you okay? You're talking about a clubhouse session, or you're talking about Satish's training?
Yeah, this cloud session. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, glad to have you back, Alok, and I hope you'll be able to join us
It was
regularly.
really very fruitful. I joined after a long time, so it was really I think it was really very fruitful, especially for me.
Yeah, thanks,
I'll
Alok.
get some momentum. I got some momentum so that I can continue. Yeah.
Yeah, glad
Thank you
glad to
all.
be of assistance. Thanks, Alok, for joining us, and thanks for joining us on stage, asking questions, clarifying things. That really adds up to the conversation. We don't have any lack of time. We can discuss as much as we want in order for you to understand better, and even to it is helpful for me as well, because I learn to I get to learn how things are happening in other areas, right, or other teams, what they are following. So it's an exchange of learning. So
Right,
it's
right.
the feelings are mutual. It's both ways. So thanks, Alok. Thanks for joining us on stage today. um, Jeevan is saying thank you and very good stuff. So Jeevan, if you like the stuff or like the discussion, to join us on stage next time. Don't just stay in the audience, right? So if you, again, I am mentioning, if you are aspiring BA, or if you are already a business analyst, right, communication is key, and you need to practice communication. And clubhouse, or this club, is a club, right? It's not a speaker and listener session. So come on stage to communicate, ask doubts, share your understanding. It's We can have a cases where we we agree on on disagreeing with each other. So it's a discussion rather than just one way conversation. So do join us on stage next time. Avinash is saying thank you, speakers. Yashwant is saying thank you. So thanks all. Thanks for joining us today. It was a really good session. I enjoyed it a lot. I hope you enjoyed it too. And let's connect uh, whenever we can next week.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for the session. Thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
Shipra.
Bye.
Good
Thanks,
night,
everyone.
everyone.
Okay.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Good
Bye. Good
night.
night, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for
Thank you, Shipra.
organizing this, Zebra.
Have a happy
Good
Thank
night,
Saturday,
you,
Kunal.
everyone.
everyone. Bye.
Thank
Thanks all. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Thanks, Kirti.
Thanks, Zebra.
Yeah, thank you.